This material was developed under the USAID LAC Reads Capacity Program implemented in Jamaica by EduConnectJA to support literacy for childhood development. The author is Opal Euter-Wilson, the illustrator Marlo Scott. Little Kenny at the farm. It was a bright and sunny day. The bus carrying little Kenny's class pulled up to Mr. Jack's farm. All the children started to cheer, bouncing excitedly up and down in their seats. Mrs. Jazzy, their teacher, stood up. "Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to be on our best behavior," she said. She looked straight at little Kenny, who was the smallest. "We will follow all the rules today, right, children? Right, Kenny?" "Yes, Miss Jazzy," Kenny answered. "Yes, miss," the rest of the children all said together. Mr. Jack, the owner of the farm, met the class as the door of the bus opened. He wore a straw hat, overalls, and boots. "Good morning, Mr. Jack," the children shouted from the bus. "Good morning, children," he said, smiling. When all the children were out of the bus, Mr. Jack said, "We are going to have a good day today. I will show you all the animals." Carisha put up her hand. "Can we pet them, Mr. Jack?" Mr. Jack said, "Only some of the smaller animals. I will tell you which ones. We have one rule that you must obey. Do not ride the donkeys," he warned. The children walked in twos behind Mr. Jack and Mrs. Jazzy. They chatted excitedly as they walked by a pond with many colorful fishes swimming up and down. When they stopped at the pig pen and watched as the pigs and piglets rolled around in the mud and squealed at each other. "Oink, oink," said Sadiki, wrinkling his nose. All the children laughed except little Kenny, who mumbled under his breath, "That's not how pigs sound." Next, they went to the chicken coop. The chickens quacked loudly as the children walked by, making chicken sounds. Little Kenny, who was lagging behind the group, threw a stone at the chickens. The chickens were frightened and flew in a bundle, clucking and running in every direction. "Kenny," said Mrs. Jazzy. She held up her warning finger. "Remember your best behavior." "Yes, miss," he said, and hurried to catch up with the others. At the rabbit hutches, Mr. Jack took out a bunny and said, "Children, you can pet him." The children gleefully crowded around, stroking the bunny's soft skin and touching its cold nose. "Does he have a name, Mr. Jack?" asked Onika. "No," said Mr. Jack, smiling broadly. "We do not give them names because we are going to sell them." Little Kenny was bored. He looked around and saw large cows in a field a little distance away. There were also some goats nearby. Then he noticed a barn. He could see 2 donkeys in it. Little Kenny's eyes lit up. "Sadiki, I'm going to look at the donkeys," he whispered. "No, Kenny," Sadika said. "Miss said we must try stay with the group." But little Kenny was already tiptoeing away. Suddenly, there was a loud shout, "Why? Why?" Mr. Jack ran towards the noise. The children and Mrs. Jazzy ran behind him. At the shed, Mr. Jack stopped suddenly. His jaw dropped in panic. Little Kenny was on the back of a donkey, bouncing up and down. The donkey was galloping around the shed. It brayed loudly while little Kenny, who was scared out of his wits, hung on with all his might. Mr. Jack tried to catch the donkey, but the donkey kicked at him. He fell. Oof! His hat was knocked off his head. Poor Mr. Jack was frightened, but he got up and chased after the bolting donkey again. Kenny screamed, "Help! Help!" The other donkeys started braying too, watching in confusion. The children shrieked in fright, "Kenny! Mrs. Jazzy put her hand on her head. "Catch him! Catch him, Mr. Jack!" she shouted. "Oh my word! What are we going to do with Kenny?" Mr. Jack grabbed the rope around the donkey's neck. The donkey kicked and jumped some more, dragging Mr. Jack behind him. Soon Mr. Jack was able to get the donkey under control. He tied the donkey to the fence and lifted Kenny from the animal's back. Then he leaned against the fence out of breath, fanning his face with his hat. Little Kenny looked frightened. He ran to Mrs. Jazzy and said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "What are you sorry about, Kenny?" Mrs. Jazzy asked sternly. Little Kenny hung his head and whispered, "I'm sorry for walking away from the group and not following the rules. I will never do it again." Kenny walked over to where Mr. Jack was, still leaning against the fence. "Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Jack." "You could have been hurt, boy," Mr. Jack said, patting Kenny on the head. "The donkeys are not used to you. They don't like strangers coming into their barn." The teacher called the children together. "What is the lesson we learned here today, class?" he asked. Sadiki put up his hand. "I know, miss." "That Kenny is afraid of donkeys." The children laughed and turned around to look at Kenny, who smiled too. "No, Sadiki, the lesson is that it is important to obey the rules," Mrs. Jazzy said. Then they had all quieted down. "Now let's go and enjoy the rest of the day," Mrs. Jazzy continued. Kenny walked over to Mrs. Jazzy and held her hand. The end.